because our Kababayan life here in the U.S., I know that one of our primary concerns is immigration. We always have weekly immigration updates for you here on Kababayan LA.
This American Dream segment is brought to you by Aquino & Lowe Law Firm, answering your immigration questions.
Attorney Allison Aquino is here joining us with some good news for a change on the immigration front, and that is the surviving relative law. Can you tell us what that is about?
Well, the surviving relative law was actually passed back in October of 2009. Immigration has spent the past year essentially trying to interpret the law and figuring out how they want to apply the law, who's going to be eligible, and what the procedures are going to be. So what has happened recently with this new surviving relative law is just last December, Immigration finally released its policy memorandum to its officers, instructing them how to interpret the law, who's eligible, and how to process applications.
First of all, this is good news because I said it at the top of the program. It used to be that when a petitioner died, the petition died along with him or her. So null and void, no more.
Well, that's still the case in some situations.
Okay.
And so what this new law does is it differentiates as to when a petition will continue despite the death of the petitioner and when a petition continues to no longer be valid once the petitioner passes away.
So there are requirements, and if you feel that you may qualify, let's review some of those requirements, starting with resided in the U.S. when the qualifying relative died. And I think this one is very important, especially to our Kababayans.
Exactly. And this is really the main difference as to whether an individual will still be eligible despite the death or whether they will not. The main requirement is that the individual or a family member, a qualifying relative, was in the United States at the time of the death, and as well if they continue to reside in the United States when they eventually apply for their green card.
Does it mean that they reside legally?
No.
Okay.
As far as the law is concerned, just being physically present in the United States, you will fulfill the requirement.
So they don't look at whether you're saying legally or illegally?
No.
So that's good.
And correct.
Yes.
And so that actually pertains to a lot of individuals who have been here in the United States, who have been residing unlawfully here in the U.S., and actually that's the situation where this new law will apply.
Okay, but this kills the hope of Kababayans who live in the Philippines because obviously they are unable to establish residency.
Not entirely.
Okay.
There are going to be very, very few situations where individuals who are residing in the Philippines will be eligible, because what the law says is that the individual resided in the United States at the time of the death.
Oh, I get it.
And that they continue to reside in the U.S.
Okay.
As far as the residency requirement is concerned, that the immigration has thankfully interpreted the law very broadly to include or to allow individuals to continue when any one beneficiary has been residing here in the United States. So it does not necessarily have to be the primary beneficiary. It can be a spouse. It can be the children. So as long as one person fulfills the requirement, the new law will apply.
Okay, all right. So it's still alive. Another requirement, though, is the beneficiary continues to reside in the U.S. on the date of the decision on the pending petition or application. Does it mean the date needs to be current or?
And, well, as far as the application of the law is concerned, individuals will still need to wait until their priority date becomes current in order to be eligible to seek the green card and apply for adjustment of status. As far as the continues to reside, that will pertain to mostly, actually, that part of the law. Although immigration has issued its policy memorandum, what individuals still need to understand is that the laws are interpreted very differently.
Yes.
And so this memorandum by immigration is immigration's interpretation of the law.
Okay.
Naturally, as a private attorney and as a not working for the immigration, I may have different interpretations of the law. Other attorneys may have other different interpretations
of the law.
of
So what happens?
So that's why we have lawsuits, and that's why we go through court, and that's why there's litigation.
Okay.
So with respect to immigration's interpretation of the law, they are allowing the continuous residency requirement to be fulfilled upon the residency of any beneficiary, and it's a question as to whether that requirement is fulfilled when I-130 is approved, or whether they still need to continue residing in the U.S. when they seek the green card.
And that is why you need a lawyer if you feel that you can benefit from this law, because sometimes, Ali, what our Kababayans do, sometimes they go to a law office and they don't get to talk to a lawyer. It's a paralegal that interprets the law, which is more dangerous, right?
Correct. And the laws are very, very complex. And this surviving relative law is extremely complex.
Right.
One of the main significant benefits under this law is actually individuals who are subject to inadmissibility. So, for example, if they entered with an assumed name, if they have unlawful presence and are subject to the 3 or 10-year bar, the surviving relative law actually significantly benefits them.
Oh, okay.
And so, one, it takes care of the fact that the petitioner passed away.
Right.
And secondly, individuals who are required to submit things like fraud waivers or unlawful presence waivers, under the surviving relative law, the presumption is that those waivers are now going to be granted.
Oh, okay. So it's almost it's being overlooked. Those earlier faults are right?
In order to fulfill the waiver requirement, you have to show extreme hardship. And what immigration is doing is they're saying that the death is the functional equivalent of extreme hardship.
All right. Obviously, this is very complicated. And like I said earlier, you need a lawyer to explain this to you, to help your case. And that is why, thankfully, we have Aquino & Low Law Firm, because they do give free office consultation. That's the number to call on the screen to schedule your appointment. Thank you so much for explaining things to us here on the show.
Always a pleasure,
And more power to you. Magbabalik po ang Kababayan LA with our own voice. What is that about? We'll explain when we return. Don't go away.